From performanceriders.com, this is the Collectives Podcast. I'm Nat Foxon, and in this episode, I'm with Brett Parbery again, having a deep conversation. We've broken down into two parts. In this first part, Brett's going to talk about the influences that he's had through his development and career as a dressage rider. I started by asking him to explain more about how his system of training that he teaches in Dressage Breakthrough has been curated based on these influences over his career.
I've been very lucky in the development of my career. First of all, to be curious. I'm very curious on how to train horses, and I love learning from everybody. So I was very curious when I first came into dressage to first of all learn a good foundation, and that seemed to come through in those days from the German sort of system and the German influence. And then at around the same time that I came into it was the rise to success of Anki with her trainer chef, and they came at it from a completely different level, sort of angle. So I was really curious to see and confused. I must say I spent a lot of time confused in those early days when, as everyone is, when they're looking at horses being put really round and down and over the back and not really knowing what over the back means, because we're all kind of educated that the horse got to be up in the pole, and then really learning that through those early days, that early 2000s. So yeah, it's very much been about a curating of and understanding the biomechanics that sit behind each system.
Yeah. So let's go through the trainers over the years who have helped you or influenced the way you have shaped your own system, which now is a system quite unique to you, but of course it's been influenced, like any fantastic piece of work, it's been influenced by others that have come before you. So what were one of the first influences that helped shape your system?
Now, I think it'd be fair to say that the system that I've tried to run with and try to use all the intelligence that I can muster to pick what I think is the best of each. I think we could draw a really clear line between, let's say, the German way and the Dutch way, if that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could then just categorize the people that have influenced me in the German way and then the people that have influenced me in the Dutch way. So in the German way of riding, my very first exposure to that was via my first coach was Vicky Bryden, and her coach or her mentor at the time. I mean, Vicky was a student of the sport like everybody, so she'd read and done things, but she'd also trained with Clements Dirks, who has been a very influential trainer in Australia, especially in the 80s and the 90s. Still influential today, but that was when I'd say that was when Clements was having his most input. And so that would be that mentoring that Vicky gave me on the way through in the early days gave me that bit of a really sound German basic. But then the other German trainers that have had a big influence on me were certainly Ulla Solskjaer, who was our squad coach in around 2005 and 6. And she was just fabulous. I really, really learned a lot from her. I think I was ready to learn from her too at that stage. Like I was looking for more cutting edge information, and she at that time was very, very successful. So Ulla was very good in that. And then also in 2008, I spent a lot of time with Hubertus Schmidt, who I would think is probably one of the greatest exponents of that classical or that good German riding. Hubertus would be, he's just a fabulous rider and a real natural rider. So between the early days of Vicky and then the influence that came from Clements, and then Ulla and Hubertus would be certainly the big influences on that side of it. And then on the other side, from the Dutch perspective, I mean, we couldn't help in those early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, reading about the Yankee and Chef system and the way that they were doing it, and how Chef, because Chef's just a real freak when it comes to testing boundaries and using his intelligence to he doesn't conform. He's not one that says, well, it always has to be like that. He'll always ask the question, why? And why can't we do it like this? And why can't we do it like that? Which I really love. I love that challenge. So Chef brought in some really interesting things about, really getting the horse more over the back and more athletic and controlling shoulders in a different way and expecting more energy from the horse within the pace control. So Chef, and then I was very lucky enough to spend time with Edward Gale and not only Edward but Nicole Werner and Hans Peter Minderhood. So those guys who are probably the best of the Dutch system as well. So I'm very lucky that I've sort of been able to spend time with Ulla and Hubertus on the German side, and then Edward, Nicole, and then learn of the Chef and Anki system. So I've sort of, I think, seen as good as you can get on best of both sides. And then I just tried to use.
You couldn't really find any better, could you? You've picked well there.
No, well, that's the benefit of being Australian. You can get into these places, and they're willing to show you because you're not a threat to them. And because, we're all a bit of a larrikin, us Australians, and we get on with everybody and we're smiling all the time and we're happy people and we like to work hard, they don't feel threatened and they really show you everything. And I was very, very lucky to have done that. And then I just figured that if I was smart, I could come up with something that pulled together the best of both. And which I think we've done, and make it clear for the horse. I mean, at the end of the day, my underlying philosophy about training horses has come from my father and from his friends, very good horsemen and women in Australia. And as we know, Australians are very good horse people. Like, there's a lot of people in Europe that can learn a lot from Australians when it comes to horsemanship. So we've been mentored with great horsemanship over here, and then to apply the structure and the disciplines of some of those European systems, I do believe I've had a really good opportunity to have a great foundation in which to build the system from.
I want to drill down into so many things that you've mentioned, but firstly, that concept of horsemanship being the underlying foundational kind of philosophy behind your system. So what does horsemanship mean to you in this context of training a dressage horse?
Oh, look, it's a number of things. Firstly, it's understanding the horse. So understanding the way they think, and then also the way in which we need to look after them. So good shoeing, good nutrition, good grooming, understanding character traits, lamenesses, diagnosis of illnesses, temperatures, the lot, all that management side. But then the horsemanship side of understanding when we've gone too far and when we have to go further. Because as you know, dressage is about expression. It's not only the most accurate it will win, it's the most accurate with the expression and the natural expression. And as we all know, we have to try and train the horses to do things that they not only do by nature, but they do it by nature on our aids, and they do it in an expressive way that is elegant and controlled, but natural looking. So it's a very, very complex sport from that side of it. So horsemanship's knowing when to push more, but then knowing when you've gone too far, or knowing when you're about to go too far, and knowing when a horse is thinking something and correcting it before it actually does it. After a while, you can sense these things just through body language or resistances that you might feel come into the horse, or breathing or something that enables you to understand what the horse is thinking, and that is an enormous skill and something that you can only build that up over time. You can be mentored in it. I mean, first of all, you've got to be made aware of it, and someone who is a great mentor will make you aware of this exists. You've got to pay attention to this, but then it's through trial and error, because at the top end of the sport, everybody's asking for more because that's what it's going to take to do well. But it's really the person who can ask for more and not stress what the horse has naturally. The horse still feels very safe, very secure, balanced,
Right.
and is muscularly able to do it, like physically able to do it.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I'll be quick. If you're interested in working with Brett Parbery, myself, and our amazing team of trainers and support crew in our program Dressage Breakthrough, now's your time to look at enrollments. Head to performanceriders.com and look for Dressage Breakthrough. Hope to see you in there. We've already put about 1,000 people through this course and it is a total game changer. Trust me on this, you're going to love it. performanceriders.com. See you there.
You've got to get it wrong a lot of times before you get it right.
Right.
And the bubbling over is not, everyone who's done this has gone too far at some point, but it's only going too far if you don't realize it. And it's also only going too far if you continue to go there and push and push and push and push and push, and the horse just shows clear and obvious signs that they are distressed. Grinding their teeth, resistances, stopping, behavioural issues, whatever it might be. So, but the person that goes there and keeps the horse confident through, periodic breaks or rewards and lots of little things, grow confidence in the horse, and then that's what the beauty of dressage is. I mean, it's just as simple as pushing and pulling. Otherwise, the local bikie gang would be the champions. It's it's really, there's so many nuances in it and so much feel. But then again, if you don't push enough, you also don't. The horse doesn't. You don't never see the best in the horse. So there's a very fine line there.
Yeah.
And the top competitors are always working close to the line.
Yeah. Let's talk about the first of the German trainers you mentioned who has influenced how you've shaped your system, and that's Ulla Salzgeber. What did you learn from Ulla that's like, how has she shaped your system? How did that come about?
Well, Ulla was a real stickler for correctness, which you'll find a lot of the Germans are. Like, that's just what they've been drilled, what's been drilled into them through their upbringing. Ulla was of the era where she came through with some of those really strict and stern old military coaches, providing her with her mentorship. So, and look, a lot of the top Germans, like, that are in their 50s and 60s now, who were the greatest, who were the best riders through the early 2000s, they were all brought up under that sort of regime. So they're quite strict, but in saying that, they're not inflexible, and they're good horse people. So Ulla had an enormous amount of discipline. She was an incredibly natural rider, beautiful shape to sit on a horse, and a lot of feel. She was a very intelligent person. So she thinks a lot about it, and especially about competition. But when it comes to, I mean, both her and Hubertus, to be honest, I mean, Hubertus is probably more, where Ulla is more systematic and disciplined. Hubertus is probably a little more free flowing, let's say, and just picks things up as they happen and keeps everything free flowing. If you wanted to make a comparison between the two. But Ulla was very much about just the good, solid riding there, leg to hand, keep them straight. She'd probably take them a little rounder than some of the German riders would. to get them through the back. Just a really good solid, using your seat, sitting square, staying out of the horse's way, riding good rhythm. That stuff was really important to me at that stage as I was forming up my sort of style of riding. The importance of rhythm, the importance of in front of your leg, the importance of straight in the outside rein, all those really good basic rules of riding. But, you can have a horse in the outside rein for, let's say, 51 steps of 52 steps on the long side, and if you let that horse drop off that outside rein on the 52nd step, they're onto you. It's got to be everywhere. Like, this is not a fluke. Like, if you're going to go into a test somewhere and you want to do a good pirouette, well, you've got to do multiple good pirouettes at home. It can't just be once, have a pack, get off and celebrate, and then go to the show and expect it to happen again. So we've got to be able to repeat this over and over and over and over, and it's got to be the only way it can happen. And same with the outside rein. The horse only learns to go into the outside rein. There's just no other way that they accept the riding. And funnily enough, when you do pay that much attention to it, it happens. And the horse doesn't mind. And that's just what I learned from people like Ulla and Hubertus.
And this is what you mean when you talk about discipline, and I suppose the commitment and consistency in the training.
That's right. That's the attention to detail. And the attention to detail to the point where the horse just learns that that's the only way it goes. As we've said a few times in the program, the easiest way to train a horse not to do something is to not show it how to do it in the first place. So, don't let the horse, in that example, drop off the outside rein. Teach it from the start and be meticulous and be on it, and then it learns that that's the only way to go. And then you never have a problem with it anymore. And that's sort of I think one of the things that, as I travel around, and even here in Australia, the stakes aren't quite high enough to test those boundaries all the time.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned also about Ulla's intelligent approach to her training, and specifically you mentioned her competitions. So I imagine that perhaps that might have been an influence on your system as well, because you're very much about learning and progression and keeping open-minded about what's going to progress you as a rider. Is that something you learned from her as well?
Yeah. Oh, look, that's true, but I've also noticed too that sometimes you've got to just be a bit pig-headed, because if you're the whole time thinking, oh, there could be a better way, oh, I've got to find this out, oh, I've got to do that. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like being closed-minded is good as well, but sometimes you've just got to stick to one thing. Consistency trains the horse. I mean, I was only saying to someone yesterday that I've seen bad riding done consistently still train the horse to do Grand Prix. It was bad, but it got there because it was consistent.
Yeah.
And so I guess, I'm certainly really keen, always have been actually, to look and learn. In some ways now, I think consistency is everything. So if you're going to, because the thing about it is, and this is a slight tangent, but the thing about it is, if you're going to have a horse, if you're going to train a horse to do dressage, at some point you're going to have a problem, right? Mm-hmm. It's inevitable not to have a problem. You're going to have a problem with something, and look, to be honest, you're going to have multiple problems, and it's the way in which we approach the problems which determines how this all goes at the end of the day. If we approach a problem by going off on a massive tangent, doubting ourselves and changing the way we do it, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that can have a really negative effect on the outcome. Sometimes it was just better to just keep doing what you were doing because you're actually doing it right in the first place, and the horse was just making the absolute normal resistances that a horse makes at that stage. So,
that's when you need to, have that great mentor or coach in your life, ideally, or like you say, sort of just stick with it.
Or just a good system, just a good system, just a system, a very simple one, because as you know, under the moments of stress and strain is when you forget your system and you start to revert back to just feel and things. So the system has to be paramount, and some checks, having some checks and balances in your system, and then having the confidence then to go, oh, well, that's normal, which can only come from someone probably who's been there and done it a few times to just give you that bit of a reassurance. But yeah, that's the thing. And that's probably, so going back to Ulla, it's ultra intelligent lady and ultra talented rider, and a fierce competitor, and those Germans, you got to remember, those Germans, they've got an enormous amount of pressure on them. The moment they get on the German team, that's really tough stuff. They are expected to win a medal. If they don't win a medal, they've let the whole country down. Like, seriously, they will be in the magazines, in the papers as a failure. Now, who wants that?
Oh, God.
Yeah, so you got to imagine those guys. It's not like being on the. Well, okay, us Australians, we love to try and do well, but we certainly don't carry the burden of what they carry. So they are really under some pressure. But all of us, she's an amazing competitor, and she taught me a lot about what you train has to end up in the ring, and this is what you want in the ring, and you've got to work back from there.
Nice.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Ulla, and I guess it's just the era when she was in her heyday, was, I don't know, I guess I was doing a lot of watching dressage videos, but I've watched a hell of a lot of Ulla over the years. And I love how she sits on the horse. And you mentioned that she sort of creates this beautiful shape. I don't know if you really meant in the horse or with her, or maybe it's all the same thing. Because for me, she is like a dancer. She looks so good on the horse. And I wonder, is that something that she teaches as well with people, or she just sits like that?
Oh, look, I think she sits like that. I think, the German riders have such a great grounding.
Yes.
When I think back to the kids that come through with the ponies in the side reins, and they come in and do a dressage test. There's like 3 or 4 of them at a time, and the pony's in the side rein, so the kid doesn't have to worry about keeping the horse round. The kid just has to sit there and sit up straight and tall and develop. At that moment, they're developing so much muscle memory in their position and how to be effective with their seat and their legs and their upper body without pulling on the reins, because the horse is made round by the side reins. So the kid doesn't have to pull on the reins, just to try and practice using its body and things. So they get such a good grounding there. And, I often laugh. Here we say, kids have got to go and chase cattle and canter up hills and down through gullies, and that teaches them to be riders. Well, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah. It doesn't teach them to be dressage riders, but it teaches them. It's a different riding. It's
different set of skills. I'm sure some of it is transferable, but even, let's transition to talking about Hubertus now as well, because he's another person who I love to see sit on the horse.
Oh.
Like, I love the way he sits on the horse. And for me, one of the similarities between the two, and there's differences for sure, but one of the similarities is that they have this way of sort of effortlessly sitting back. Like, sometimes you use that word perching. Some people get a bit perchy. And Ulla and Hubertus are the last people in the world who I think you'd say perch. They have this thing of they sit back and they allow to be carried. And they just look.
Look, I'm going to challenge you, Nat,
all right,
at the end of the podcast to try and choose or identify one thing in all the riders that I'm going to name tonight, one thing they all share in common, right? Now, that's something that you can think of as talking about this on the way through. Yeah, look, Huberta Schmidt, what a beautiful rider. Just a natural rider, horseman. Like horses love him, like they love carrying him and they love working for him. He is a beautiful rider. Like I've never seen a guy quite like that. He can make a horse hot and not even use his legs. Something in the way Hubertus's body works through his hips and through kind of his seat, and you never see him pushing a horse or pulling a horse. I mean, he'll occasionally have to make a correction, but that's different. Like you never see him just grinding and doing anything that's horse unfriendly. He is just a natural rider, and his horses have this really free way of going. Like they're free and they're moving and they are balanced. And he's back, as you said, in his body. He's back. He gives them all the room in the world to come up through the wither. And yeah, I mean, he's just a real natural rider, and like I say, the horses love him. They really want to work for him.
So, and what about his training? What specific parts of his training have you sort of borrowed for your own over the years?
Yeah, I guess the thing with him was this real importance about the back to the front. So, working the importance of the half halt, because I mean, okay, it's great to say, oh yeah, we just get the horse working from behind. That's easy to say, but you've got to have control over the horse's balance and pace, and frame to some extent, in order that the working from behind just doesn't end up running or against your hand or running out through the shoulders, or it's got to be this controlled but channeled balance that's working from the back end. So Hubertus, his very first thing that he does is he develops a really strong working pace. So I guess just while I think of that, I guess one of the big things that watching Hubertus and listening to him, that the working pace becomes the collected pace, and the collected pace becomes the Grand Prix work. So that would be the biggest thing for me with Hubertus. I mean, he certainly didn't over prioritize shoulders or frame or anything like that, but he wanted horses to work hard, like work from behind, and not just drop off the aids when you were a bit tired or they thought they were allowed to stop. That they have to work until you tell them when to stop. And that I got that pretty much from him. So
that's massive in your system.
That's really the foundation of identifying the pace. Like when we talk about pace control, well, you can only control something that you can actually identify. So you've got to be able to be on your horse and go, I'm in working trot now. This is working trot. This is my working trot. Now you have to get that verified occasionally with some eyes on the ground. But then you've got to be able to say, right, from this working trot now, I'm going to make a half halt or multiple half halts, and now I want to be in collected trot with the horse, and really true to the definition of collected trot for that specific horse. So that definition of the pace that you want to be in and is so important, and every rider has to have that. You can't rely on just eyes on the ground, and you can't rely on just judges' feedback for it. You have to actually ask yourself the question when you're riding: am I in working trot? Yes or no. Now, okay, now I need to get to working trot. I need to have the horse in front of my leg and in my rhythm, and I need to be in working trot, and then I need to now create collected trot or collected canter. Now I need to create pirouette canter. So that's probably the biggest thing I took from Hubertus is the real definition in the paces and the clarity of that you need to be super clear what you're expecting from them.
That's the word I wrote down when you were talking, was clarity.
Yeah.
That's a wrap for part 1 of this conversation. Keep your eye out for part 2 coming soon.